I think if everyone had to describe this movie in one word, it would be emotional. Hello everyone and welcome to Rewind Reviews. In this video we are taking a look at Pixar's latest animated sequel, and that is Inside Out 2. Released in 2024, the movie follows a now 13-year-old Riley as she encounters a variety of new emotions in a new social setting. The sequel to the 2015 animated movie Inside Out 2 was directed and co-written by Kelsey Mann alongside screenwriters Meg LeFauve and Dave Holstein, and stars the voice talent of Amy Poehler, Maya Hawke, Kensington Tallman, Phyllis Smith, Lewis Black, Tony Hale, Lisa Lapira, Ayo Idibiri, Paul Walter Hauser, and Adele Exarchopoulos. Back when the first movie was released back in 2015, I remember seeing a lot of the trailers and a lot of the marketing for it, and I remember thinking just how different and how interesting it seemed. But I wasn't sure if I'd like it or not. And when I eventually did get around to watching it, it really surprised me. It was emotional, affecting, inventive, and creative. It had some great ideas and concepts. The characters were fun and compelling. The animation was brilliant, and it featured honestly one of the most moving soundtracks I have ever heard. It became one of Pixar Animation's best movies at that point in time, and I really enjoyed it. So when they announced that the sequel was in development, I was kind of curious about what it was that they would actually do with it and what the focus of it would be. And one question that I did have was whether or not it was going to focus on Riley once again, or if it was going to focus on a completely different character. And 9 years later, the sequel is finally out, and I have my answers. Expectations were high, hankies were at the ready, it is a Pixar movie after all, and my 3D glasses were on. Yes, I went to go and see this in 3D. I didn't actually know they still did 3D movies, to be honest. And to be fair, it was one of the better experiences that I've had with it. Anyway, and yes, it's absolutely delivered, and in some pretty unexpected ways as well. The story this time around picks up a few years after the events of the first movie, and once again follows Riley as she officially becomes a teenager and is about to enter high school. But when the puberty alarm goes off in Riley's mind headquarters, the original emotions are thrown into disarray as the demolition crew arrive to make space for several new emotions. Envy, embarrassment, ennui, and anxiety, who have their own ideas on how to help Riley as she struggles to balance her old and new friends and ultimately fit in. Like the first movie, the focus is on Riley during a seismic change in her life. It also focuses on how her emotions handle that change and the impact that it has on the people around her. It does follow a lot of very similar plot beats to the first movie, so it does feel quite familiar, but at the same time, what it is that Riley is going through in this movie, the new setting, the new location, her age, and the new emotions that are introduced, all of that contributes into making this feel a bit different. Plus, everything that was established in the first movie, this one builds off of, and it does feel like everything has progressed. And even though this is a sequel, I do think that you can go into this movie and have a great experience even without ever seeing the first film. It does a really good job of catching you up on how everything works pretty quickly, how the mind headquarters operate and who they all are, but it is telling its own story. I mean, you should watch the first movie anyway because it is absolutely fantastic. But if you just go into this movie without any prior knowledge, I think that you should be okay and you should be able to follow it. The story and premise for this one explores the complexities of growing up, going through adolescence and life changes, the dangers of bottling up emotions, trying to become something that you aren't in an attempt to fit in, how that affects friends and family, and having to deal with a load of negative emotions and self-doubt. It's pretty deep and it is a heavy story overall, but it's told in a fun, humorous and highly creative way that helps you understand and empathise with Riley, even when she makes bad decisions. And it builds up towards a message that is very simple and effective, and I think that it's something that I think a lot of people could do with hearing. It's a feel-good movie that puts you through the emotional ringer, especially if you are somebody who has either gone through this or are going through this now. Plus, I love the characters that are introduced into this movie, how they're introduced, what they represent, and how they play into the overall story. Most of the characters from the first movie return for this one, along with most of the original voice cast as well, including Amy Poehler as Joy, Lewis Black as Anger, Phyllis Smith as Sadness, and Diane Lane and Kyle MacLachlan as Riley's parents. Plus, a few new voices taking over from the original cast, with Kensington Tallman now voicing Riley, Lisa Lapira as Disgust, and Tony Hale as Fear. I think all of the new voices do fit in really well, and it is hard to tell the difference between the voices from the first movie and the ones from this one. But as a collective, I think that every single person that is voicing a character in this movie gets really stuck in. They really understand these characters and they do some fantastic work overall. The voices all sound absolutely perfect, and what everyone does with their roles is really good, especially Amy Poehler as Joy and Lewis Black as Anger, who get to explore different sides to their characters. And I've also got to give special props to Kensington Tallman, who has a very difficult job of voicing this version of Riley, but she absolutely knocks it out the park. But it's not just returning characters in this. We get introduced to a load of new characters, including Riley's friends Grace and Bree, voiced by Grace Liu and Sumaya Nuruddin Green, the girls from the Firehawk hockey team that Riley wants to join, and of course the new emotions. Envy, voiced by Ayo Edebiri, Ennui, ennui voiced by Adele Exarchopoulos, embarrassment voiced by Paul Walter Hauser, and anxiety voiced by Maya Hawke. We also see a quick glimpse of nostalgia voiced by June Squibb, and I quite like that she does sort of pop in and out every so often. She doesn't have a big role, she only really has like a few scenes here and there, and every time she pops out they just keep shooing her away. I quite like her rose tinted glasses though, I thought that was a nice touch. But as for the other four, I really like how they're handled, what they add to the overall story, and how their appearance affects both Riley and the older emotions who are already struggling to figure out why Riley is acting so different. Anxiety especially, who's the most prominent of the new emotions, and she becomes the dominant force within the Mind headquarters. She begins to take over, and she genuinely believes that she's protecting and helping Riley in this new environment and the new social situations that she finds herself in. It's something that I think a lot of people that are watching this movie will either understand or recognise in some way, and I think that like the first movie did, I think that this movie will help people understand those emotions a little bit better. And not only that, it helps people, especially younger people, understand that other people go through these emotions as well. As for the voice performances, Pixar has absolutely done it again and cast the perfect voices for these characters who each bring the right amount of energy, enthusiasm, or even boredom. They've done an excellent job casting this movie. The characters themselves are balanced out really well without ever feeling overcrowded, and I love how they've all been approached. I did question why it is that none of the new emotions appeared in the first movie, especially within the grown-ups' minds, but it's just one of those things. I'm also aware that there was an earlier version of the screenplay for this movie that did actually feature a load of different emotions to the ones that actually do appear. There was going to be freedom, love, passion, strength, and I believe two other characters were going to be introduced as well, called guilt and suspicion. I'm not quite sure what the story would be if they did introduce those emotions and what their dynamic would be like with the older emotions, but I am quite curious to see that if Inside Out does get another installment in this franchise, and Inside Out 3, whether or not those characters would actually make an appearance in that one and what they would actually contribute to it. But as it is, I think that they picked the right emotions to introduce in this movie, especially where Riley is at this point in time. It makes 100% sense. They are integrated into the story very well, and they are handled in a fun, mature and creative way. The creativity that goes into developing these movies is absolutely wonderful. The concepts and ideas that are presented when it comes to the mind and how the mind works is really inventive and a load of fun. As I said, it does build on a lot of elements that were introduced in the first movie, but this movie does introduce and explore a load of new concepts as well. Plus, you see the impact that anxiety has on Riley's mind when she starts meddling around and corrupting things, and how that's handled and presented, I do think is really clever. I mean, I would have liked to have seen the impact that anxiety has on the islands that were introduced in the first movie, or like the Goofball Island, the Family Island and things like that, because what she's doing would absolutely impact what happens on those islands, but it's never actually addressed throughout the entire runtime of this movie. But I do understand why they probably didn't do that, because it would feel like it would be just repeating everything that happened in the first movie, so I do appreciate that. I think my favourite new inclusion in this movie is the sarcasm. It's basically like this massive crater that opens up within Riley's mind, where whenever the characters are like trying to shout across it, the person on the other side, when they're hearing the voice of the person shouting, it just comes across as really sarcastic, and it's just really funny when that happens. Plus, I love the idea of this vault that's at the back of everyone's mind, where you basically put all these dark secrets and things you want to forget. And that includes things like this 2D character that Riley probably grew up watching, and it's very reminiscent of a lot of those old TV shows that people might have watched back when they were in nursery. It's really funny, it's really clever, and this sequence got the biggest reaction out of my audience. And that includes easily my favourite character in this movie, and that's a video game character that Riley had a bit of a crush on. And that is something that appears within this vault. I think he's a really funny character, and I like how he's integrated into this. It's really fun, and I love what they've been able to include in this one. I think I need to mention the animation now. I've gone far too long through this video without mentioning it. Pixar, in my opinion, is one of the greatest 3D animation studios that exists within Hollywood. They're pioneers that help construct and evolve the animation industry into what it is today. Yes, they've hit a few rough patches over the past few years in terms of their story output, but in terms of the animation and the quality of their animation, they are still at the top. And it's absolutely no different for this movie. The quality of the animation and art style is absolutely flawless and looks so much more realistic and detailed than ever before. Riley now looks a little bit older, she's got a few spots, and she's even wearing braces with those little elastic bands. The hair and textures on everyone looks absolutely amazing and more real than ever before. Even Riley's dad has got some very realistic looking stubble. The fabrics and clothing that everyone wears and interacts with look great and react believably to both motion and movements. And as realistic as a lot of it looks, it still has traits of being a cartoon. It mixes mixes together a variety of different animation techniques and art styles. Like the stuff in the real world looks very realistic and very believable, especially the backgrounds and environments. But then inside Riley's mind headquarters, everything still looks quite cartoonish and, well, animated. Plus those characters that appear within the vault, they have the animation and art style of what it is that they are from. The 2D character reacts, moves and interacts in the same way that you would find in a 2D cartoon, and the video game character does move and he does act like something that you'd find in a fighting game. It's really good. The design of the characters and the new locations, especially the ones within Riley's mind, look absolutely incredible. I really love the look of the new emotions and how their designs emphasise certain aspects of their personalities. Like with Envy being a really small character, she's the smallest of the emotions, but her eyes are really big to really help emphasise the envy that she feels. And then when it comes to embarrassment, he's the biggest character out of all the emotions, and he's got this hoodie that he wears throughout the entire movie, and anytime he feels embarrassment or ashamed in any way, he just puts his hood over his head and hides. Plus, as I said, the new locations, especially one within Riley's mind called the Sense of Self, that looks like something out of the Avatar movies, and it's absolutely stunning. I really like how each location is used and what it is that each location represents, and I love the use of lighting as well. This is an absolutely dazzling film. It is bright, colourful, lively, and there is always something eye-catching. The sound design is also incredible, and it's really realistic. The Foley, the sound effects, as well as the voices, how they're used, how they fit into what's actually happening, and how they adapt to each environment sounds absolutely incredible. And as for the soundtrack from composer Andrea Datzman, it's fantastic. Like the soundtrack from the first movie, which it does borrow a few themes from, it's absolutely beautiful and it is moving once again. But this time it's got a slightly more punk-oriented theme, which I did quite like because it is quite suitable for where it is that Riley is. It's really suitable for everything that does happen throughout this movie, and I like a lot of the new themes that are introduced as well, especially Anxiety's theme, which very fittingly is quite disorienting. It's a brilliant soundtrack overall, and I love how it's used throughout the film. Overall, I thought that this was a fantastic movie. I don't know if I'd say it's as good as the first film, but it is easily one of Pixar's best in recent years. It's deep, funny, relatable, highly entertaining, with some great ideas that build on what's come before and introduces some brand new, complex and clever concepts that are easy to understand. The characters are great once again, with all of the voice actors giving pitch perfect performances, and I love how each character fits within the narrative without it ever feeling overcrowded. They're all memorable and make this both fun and, excuse the pun, emotional to watch. The animation, the art style and overall designs are absolutely stunning as always. It's edited well, it's paced just right with the right runtime, and the cinematography and overall look is brilliant. Yes, there are some plot beats that feel a bit familiar, and there are some things that aren't addressed, but there's nothing distracting and nothing will take you out of the experience. I would definitely recommend seeing this movie if you can. It's a brilliant family-friendly film that both kids and adults will enjoy, and it features a really deep and meaningful message that I think a lot of people could do with hearing. I really enjoyed this overall. Tears were shed, I had a laugh, and I had a great time with it overall. So with all that being said, my rating for Inside Out 2 is a 9 out of 10. I really hope we get to see more from this franchise in the future. I know there is a TV show that is in development that's all based on like the dream factory that appears in Riley's mind, and it's going to be all about how dreams impact us. That sounds really interesting, and I'm quite curious to see what it is that they'll do with that. But until then, I am really looking forward to seeing what it is that Pixar has in store for us in the future. Except for Toy Story 5, I don't think we need another one. And that's coming from somebody who absolutely adored the first three. Anyway, well, that is pretty much everything I want to say for Inside Out 2, so if you have stuck around, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoy this content, be sure to like, subscribe and hit that notification button. If you have seen Inside Out 2, let me know down in the comments what you think about it. Plus, if you have any suggestions for any future rewind reviews or recommendations you would like to see me do, let me know down below. But until then, thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you in the next video. See you guys.